You ever have one of those moments where you stop, look at what's happening, and think, there's no way this is real life? That was me, staring at Karen's shiny luxury SUV as it sat parked right in the middle of my hay road like it owned the place. The morning sun hadn't even burned off the dew yet. My boots were still wet from walking the fence line, and I could hear the rusty squeak of the old gate swinging behind me as I walked up. I thought maybe, just maybe, her car had broken down. But then I saw her, sitting inside, sunglasses on, scrolling her phone without a care in the world, like my farm was her personal driveway. Now I'm not a man who startles easy. Out here you get used to surprises, cows breaking through the fence, storms rolling in without warning, coyotes howling at midnight. But this was new. I knocked gently on her window. She rolled it down just far enough to smirk. Technically, she said, this is unused land. HOA streets don't allow overnight vehicles, so I'm just using what's available. I swear I could feel my pulse in my ears. Unused land? Lady, this was my hay road. My tractor runs up and down here every day. Without it, the entire rhythm of my farm gets disrupted. I tried to keep my voice steady. Karen, you need to move your SUV. This isn't community property, it's mine. She leaned back, smug as ever. Correction, she chirped. It's rural access land, which means I'm within my rights. Then she rolled her window up like the conversation was over. I stood there for a minute, listening to the faint creak of the barn door in the breeze, the distant lowing of cattle waiting for feed, and the faint hum of her engine cooling. And I thought, this woman has just made a mistake she won't forget. To understand why my blood boiled that morning, you have to know what came before. For most of my life, this land was quiet. My dad worked it before me and his dad before him. We grew hay, raised cattle, kept chickens. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Sunrise meant chores, roosters crowing, the sound of boots crunching on gravel. The kind of life where your neighbors waved from their trucks and minded their own business. For decades, it stayed that way, peaceful, free. Then came Meadowbrook Estates. What used to be cornfields got bulldozed and paved into cul-de-sacs and lifestyle living. They slapped a fancy sign at the entrance, built a guard shack, and called it Progress. And with Progress came the HOA. Now I don't have much against folks wanting neat lawns or matching mailboxes. If that's what makes them happy, fine. But it should have ended at their property lines. Except it didn't. Not with Karen. She wasn't just a homeowner. She was the self-declared lifestyle chairwoman, strutting around in yoga pants that probably cost more than my tractor tires, acting like she'd been crowned queen of the county. I first met her at the farmer's market. I was selling eggs and honey. She picked up a jar, wrinkled her nose like it stank. Quaint, she said. But don't you think the presentation could be elevated? People in our community expect certain standards. Standards for honey, I nearly laughed in her face. Ma'am, these are eggs from chickens, not much elevating you can do. But she just smirked, her eyes drifting to the mud on my boots, the calluses on my hands. That was my first taste of her superiority complex, and trust me, it was just the appetizer. A week later, I found a glossy HOA pamphlet in my mailbox. Join our beautification program, it read. And at the bottom, in Karen's handwriting, your farm is the first thing visitors see when they turn into Meadowbrook. We'd appreciate your cooperation in raising the aesthetic. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. My land wasn't part of their subdivision. Never was, never will be, but she kept pushing. Notices taped to my barn, complaints about my hay bales looking sloppy. Even her cronies wandering near my fence line, snapping pictures of my cows. When I confronted them, one of them muttered, "We're documenting potential nuisances for community review." Nuisances, that's what they called livestock. For months I tried patience, I smiled, I waved, I ignored the flyers and the comments. My dad always said patience was a farmer's strongest tool, but patience only works if the other side has limits, and Karen, she had none. So that morning when I saw her SUV sitting bold as brass on my hay road, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. It was a challenge. She crossed the line, literally. And in that moment, as the wind rustled through the trees and a rooster crowed behind me, I made myself a quiet promise. I wasn't going to shout, I wasn't going to threaten, but I was going to teach her something she'd never forget. Because here's the truth, People like Karen think rules are for everyone else. They think property lines are just suggestions, but out here on this land, those lines mean everything. Their history, their survival. And when someone treats them like a joke, well, sometimes the only way they'll learn is the hard way. You ever notice how arrogance doesn't knock at the door? It barges in, muddy boots and all. That's exactly how Karen operated. If her SUV parked on my hay road was a warning shot, then what came next was a full-scale invasion. It started small. I came back from fixing a fence one afternoon to find a bright orange "No Parking" sign staked right up against my side of the road. HOA logo stamped across the top, a little tree in a circle like they thought it gave them authority here. I yanked it out of the dirt and tossed it in the ditch. By the next morning, 2 more had sprouted up like weeds. Day after that, a whole row of them. And it wasn't just signs. Karen had gathered a little beautification crew, clipboard warriors in polo shirts, marching up and down my fence line like they were planting flags in conquered territory. One of them caught me watching and called out, "We've had multiple complaints about vehicles visible near your property." "Vehicles?" I asked. "Yes, tractors." I laughed so hard I nearly doubled over. "Lady, this is a farm, not a strip mall. What do you expect to see here, golf carts?" She didn't laugh. None of them did. They just scribbled something on their clipboards and moved on, as if my entire livelihood was a violation waiting to be processed. I tried talking sense. One evening, I walked over to Karen's backyard where she and a few HOA officers were sipping wine like suburban royalty. I stayed polite. "Look," I said, "my farm isn't under your HOA. You can stop leaving notices on my barn." Karen gave me that tight smile of hers, the one that never reached her eyes. "I understand your perspective," she said sweetly. "But technically, your land borders our community. First impressions matter. When guests arrive, the first thing they see is your operation." I felt my jaw tighten. This is a farm, Karen. Mud, manure, hard work, that's the standard. She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "Progress is inevitable. You'll thank us later." Progress, that word rolled off her tongue like a threat. A few mornings later, I spotted them again. 2 men in Meadowbrook polo shirts standing right in the middle of my pasture, clipboards in hand. My cows stared at them like they'd just landed from Mars. I stormed over, boots sinking into soft ground. "What the hell are you doing in here?" The taller one didn't even flinch. "Documenting potential nuisances for community review." "Nuisances?" I pointed at the cows. "They moo, they poop, that's what cows do." He scribbled something down. "Livestock odor, noise, possible water contamination." Then the 2 of them just walked off, leaving my cows blinking in confusion and me standing there with my fists clenched. That night I sat on my porch, beer sweating in my hand, listening to the creak of the porch swing. And I thought, they aren't just nagging anymore, they're testing me. Step by step, clipboard by clipboard, they were trying to fold my farm into their little empire. And the scariest part? They didn't even see it as wrong. To them, it was progress. To me, it was trespass dressed up in entitlement. But nothing compared to what I woke up to next. It was early, the kind of morning where fog clings low to the grass and the roosters haven't even finished their first chorus. I poured myself a cup of coffee, pushed open the screen door, and there it was. Karen's shiny black SUV, parked smack in the middle of my hay road. Again, this time not just for an hour, not just for a quick stop. No, it sat there like it had been planted overnight, proud as a monument. I walked over, boots crunching on gravel, steam rising off my coffee. She was inside, scrolling her phone, sunglasses on. I tapped on the glass. "Morning, Karen. You know this is my land, right?" She rolled the window down an inch. "Technically," she said, "I needed parking. HOA streets don't allow overnight vehicles. Your road is just sitting here." "Karen," I said slowly, like I was explaining to a child, "this is my access road. My tractor uses it every day." She shrugged. "Tractors can go around." Go around, through the pasture, over the fence. Like this was a Walmart parking lot and I could just pick another aisle. I gave her one last chance. "Move it, or I'll move it for you." She didn't even look up from her phone. "Go ahead, you'll be hearing from our lawyers." Then she killed the conversation with the click of her window rising. And she left it there. One night turned into two, then three. By day two, she was bragging to her HOA friends about her new overflow parking solution. They came by in little groups, gawking at the SUV like it was a roadside attraction. A couple of them even posed for selfies in front of it, my pasture in the background. "This spot is perfect," one of them said. "It makes Meadowbrook look bigger, almost like we've expanded." Expanded, that word burned. This wasn't expansion, this was theft. By the third evening, I caught Karen giving a tour to some new homeowners. She waved toward her SUV and my hay road like she was a realtor closing a deal. "And over here," she announced, "we've got overflow parking thanks to underutilized rural land." That's when I snapped. I marched up, dust rising off my boots, grease still on my hands from fixing a baler. "This isn't overflow parking," I barked loud enough for the newcomers to hear. "This is private property. You're trespassing. Get your car out of here, now." Karen smiled like she'd just won. "Oh, don't be so territorial. Sharing builds community spirit." "Spirit?" I laughed bitterly. "This is a farm, not a spirit retreat. You don't share someone's land without asking. That's theft." "If you don't like it," she said sweetly, "file a complaint with the HOA." The new couple mumbled something awkward and backed away. Karen stood tall, like she'd just scored a victory. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer, staring at her SUV glinting in the moonlight. Every time I looked at it, I could almost hear it mocking me. "What are you going to do, farmer? File a complaint." And that's when the thought hit me, not all at once, but slow, like a grin spreading across my face. If Karen wanted to turn my land into her parking lot, maybe I'd give her a parking spot she'd never forget. You ever notice how some people don't just cross the line, they dance on it? That's what Karen did. Parking her SUV on my hay road was bold enough, but what came next? It was like she wanted a war. At first it was whispers. I overheard them at the feed store, HOA folks chatting about expanding recreational opportunities and integrating rustic charm into Meadowbrook's lifestyle. I thought they were talking about birdhouses or maybe a walking trail inside their subdivision. But no, they were talking about my farm. By Saturday, whispers turned into reality. I stepped out of my farmhouse, coffee steaming in my hand, and nearly dropped the mug. Down by my pond, standing proud as if it had every right to be there, was a massive white event tent. Beneath it, tables covered with pastel tablecloths, pitchers of mimosas, trays of quiche and avocado toast. And right in the middle, sun hat tilted just so, was Karen. "Welcome to Meadowbrook's first farm-to-table brunch," she announced, holding a glass of Chardonnay at 10 in the morning. I marched down the hill, boots kicking up dust, trying to keep calm. "What the hell is this?" Karen turned all smiles. "Good morning. Isn't this setting divine? Your pond makes the perfect backdrop. Very bucolic." "Bucolic," I repeated, my voice sharp. "This is my land. You didn't ask. You didn't tell me. You just set up camp." She waved her hand like I was some pesky fly. "Don't be so dramatic. We're honoring your heritage, raising awareness for sustainable living." I glanced around. Yoga mats were unrolled across my hayfield. A woman was stuck in downward dog while one of my roosters strutted past, pecking at her ponytail. Another guy tried to meditate by the pond until a duck nipped his ankle. Meanwhile, my cattle lined up at the fence, mooing like spectators at a circus. "Heritage," I said, pointing at the chaos. "My chickens are attacking your yoga class." Karen didn't even flinch. Authenticity adds charm. Charm, that word almost made me laugh. Because from where I stood, all I saw was trespass, spilled champagne on my soil, and an HOA treating my farm like a resort. "Pack it up," I said, my voice steady. "Now, this isn't a park, it's private property." Karen took a slow sip of her wine, eyes sparkling with arrogance. "We're improving your land, you should thank us." One of her buddies chimed in, "With just a little landscaping, this could be a beautiful venue. Weddings, picnics, HOA retreats." "Yeah," I shot back, "and imagine me suing the lot of you for trespassing." That silenced most of them, but not Karen. She leaned closer, her voice low and sharp. "You don't understand. Change is coming whether you like it or not. If you don't adapt, the city will rezone this land. You'll be boxed in by Meadowbrook. Best to cooperate before it gets messy." And there it was, the threat. Not just brunch, not just yoga mats. She was trying to scare me into surrendering my land piece by piece. I stared at her, then at her SUV parked up the hill, glinting in the sun like a trophy. And something inside me snapped. "You want messy?" I said quietly. "Keep your car here, I'll show you messy." Karen laughed like I'd just told the world's funniest joke. "Oh, please, what are you going to do? Throw hay at it." But she didn't know me. She didn't know farmers don't bluff. We plan, we wait. And when the time comes, we strike. That night, after they finally packed up their tents and carted off the leftover quiche, I walked down to the pond. The moonlight shimmered across the water, calm and quiet, as if mocking the chaos from earlier. I knelt at the edge, running my hand over the damp soil. To most people it looked solid, but I knew better. Years of silt and clay made these banks tricky. To the untrained eye, harmless. Step too close, though, and it would suck your boots clean off. That's when the idea truly took root. I didn't need lawyers, I didn't need shouting matches. What I needed was patience and one old machine that had never let me down. My excavator. I patted the cold steel that night, whispered to it like an old friend. "Time to earn your keep, buddy." The plan was simple. Loosen the soil just right, make the ground look firm but soft underneath. Then let arrogance do the rest. So I fired up the excavator. The diesel engine coughed, then roared, echoing across the fields. Hydraulics hissed, the bucket groaning as I churned the dirt along the bank where Karen loved to park and pose. I worked methodically, smoothing it out until it looked harmless. By dawn, you'd never know the difference. But I did, and soon so would Karen. The Monday after the brunch fiasco, I knew the storm was coming. Karen wasn't the type to sulk quietly. She polished her grudges, paraded them around, turned them into committee agendas. Sure enough, by mid-morning, a convoy rolled up to my farm road. 3 SUVs, a golf cart with security painted on the side, and a half-dozen clipboard warriors marching like they were invading Normandy. And at the front, of course, was Karen, dressed for battle in a bright orange blazer, oversized sunglasses, and a megaphone that looked brand new. I leaned against my tractor, sipping coffee, watching like it was free entertainment. "Attention, farmer," Karen's voice boomed. Not my name, not even a sir, just farmer, like I was some background character in her HOA soap opera. "This encroachment cannot continue. Your animals are noisy, your structures unsightly. Your unregulated pond is a hazard. Effective immediately, Meadowbrook Estates claims authority over this shared environment." Her followers clapped like she delivered the Gettysburg Address. I set my mug down. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You just declared authority over my farm." "That's correct," she said proudly, holding up a folder. Inside were printed Google Maps screenshots with my land circled in red Sharpie. Not deeds, not surveys, just doodles. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. "You drew on a map, that's your documentation." Her smile tightened, but she pushed on. "We've filed a petition with the county. Until then, we will enforce community standards." Her posse marched forward, slapping bright orange notices on my barn, my fences, even on a cow's feed trough. The papers said things like violation, unkempt appearance and violation, improper vehicle storage. I snatched them down as fast as they went up. "This is trespassing," I growled. Karen smirked. "It's called community enforcement." I leaned in low enough for only her to hear. "No, Karen, it's called digging your own grave." For the first time, I saw her mask slip. But she wasn't done posturing. She pointed at my excavator, her voice rising. "If that vehicle so much as touches my car, you'll be sued into bankruptcy." Her clipboard army cheered. The security guy revved his little golf cart like he was about to chase cattle. I raised my hands, all innocent. "Oh, don't worry, wouldn't want to scratch your precious SUV. I'll keep it safe, very, very safe." The way I said it must have unsettled her because she gave me one last glare before storming off, entourage in tow. But her SUV? She left it, parked proudly on my hay road, like a flag planted in conquered territory. That night I sat on my porch, watching the moon glint off its shiny black paint. The silence was heavy, the kind you only get when trouble's brewing, and I thought, they think Sharpie maps and orange flyers give them power here. They think bylaws outrank generations of sweat and soil. They think I'm just a farmer they can scare into rolling over. But they forgot one thing. Farmers aren't pushovers. We endure droughts, storms, coyotes, disease. We endure. And when someone trespasses long enough, we fight back with the tools we know best. I walked down to my excavator, ran my hand along its steel frame, and whispered, "Tomorrow, buddy. Tomorrow we show them what real enforcement looks like." You ever feel the air go heavy before a storm? That was me the night before it all went down. Couldn't sleep. Sat on the porch swing, beer in hand, listening to the cicadas and the creak of the gate in the breeze. My farm had seen its share of storms, hail that flattened whole crops, coyotes that tore through the chicken run, even a barn fire back in '98. But this storm wasn't coming from nature. It was coming from one woman with a megaphone and an ego bigger than her SUV. That SUV sat there, glistening under the moonlight like a monument to arrogance. Every time I looked at it, I could almost hear it mocking me. "What are you gonna do, farmer? Call the HOA." And that's when it hit me, not like lightning, more like a slow grin spreading across my face. See, my pond isn't just a pond. It's an old reservoir dug deep decades ago to store water for dry summers. Over the years, clay and silt made the banks tricky. They look solid, grassy even, but step too close and the muck will swallow your boots clean off. I knew every inch of that pond. Karen didn't. So I made a plan, simple, clean, poetic. If Karen wanted a parking spot on my farm, I'd give her one. Permanent. I climbed into the excavator that night, the diesel engine coughing before it roared awake. Hydraulics hissed like an old beast stretching its legs. Slowly, I drove it to the pond's edge, bucket arm groaning as I churned the soil, loosened it, smoothed it, made it look harmless. By dawn, it looked solid as ever, but I knew better. It was a trap. Morning came bright, clear, one of those perfect farm mornings where the cows bawl for breakfast and the roosters announce themselves like they're running for mayor. And right on cue, here came Karen. She strutted onto my land like she owned the deed, sunglasses flashing, SUV rumbling behind her. Her entourage followed like ducklings, clipboards, yoga pants, smug smiles. She waved at me like we were old friends. "Lovely day, isn't it?" I nodded, biting back a laugh. "Sure is, perfect day for parking." She didn't catch the sarcasm. Of course she didn't. Karen only ever heard what she wanted. She cut the engine, stepped out, and spread her arms. "Much better view here, don't you think?" she said, pointing toward the pond. Her little audience murmured agreement, imagining gazebos and wedding venues. Meanwhile, I imagined her SUV slowly sinking, bubbles rising, her smug smile slipping. Patience, I told myself. Farmers know patience better than anyone. But I wasn't just going to leave it to chance. I wanted insurance. So I climbed back into the excavator, fired it up. Its engine roared across the field, turning heads instantly. Karen scoffed, hands on her hips. "Really? That toy again? You think you can intimidate us with farm equipment?" I leaned out of the cab, grinning. "Not intimidate, facilitate." I lowered the bucket, nudging the dirt just behind her SUV. Each scoop loosened the soil a little more, making the ground softer, wetter. The HOA crowd started shifting nervously, whispering among themselves. But Karen, she doubled down. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You're creating unsafe conditions." I shrugged. "Unsafe looks fine to me, but you might want to check your tires." Right on cue, the back end of her SUV sagged an inch. Just an inch. But to me, it was beautiful, like the first crack of dawn after a long night. To Karen, it was panic. She ran to the driver's door, yanking it open, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, tires spinning, mud spraying. But the ground had her now, and it wasn't letting go. The HOA crew gasped. One guy dropped his clipboard straight into the muck. A woman screamed, "Do something." I tapped the side of the excavator, calm as Sunday morning. "Don't worry," I said. "I am." With a steady hand, I lowered the bucket behind the SUV. Gave it one gentle push. Not hard, just enough encouragement, like guiding a stubborn cow back into the pen. The tires slipped, the earth crumbled, and slowly, so slowly it was almost theatrical, the SUV tilted forward, nose dipping toward the pond. Karen shrieked, "No, stop, that's my car." Her precious status symbol was sliding, mud swallowing its wheels, water lapping at the bumper. I sipped from my thermos, utterly unbothered. Looks like it found the valet spot. She spun toward me, mascara already smudging. You'll pay for this, you'll lose everything. I tilted my head. Funny, that's exactly what your car is doing right now. By the time the sun hit high noon, half the SUV was swallowed, bubbles rising, headlights glaring in the murky water like drowning eyes. The HOA crew was frantic, snapping photos, dialing phones, yelling into the void. But no cops came. No tow truck dared risk the muck. Karen stood on the bank, shrieking promises of lawsuits that would never hold water, just like her SUV. Me, I sat in my excavator watching calmly, like a man enjoying the fruits of a good harvest. Because here's the truth, this wasn't just about a car, it was about a line finally drawn, a message finally delivered. You don't mess with a farmer's land, not unless you want to watch your pride sink straight to the bottom. And that day, Karen's pride was sinking fast. You ever notice how word travels faster in the country than it does on the internet? By the time Karen's SUV had its bumper kissing the pond water, it wasn't just me, her, and a few clipboard warriors standing around. No, half the county seemed to have shown up. Neighbors pulled over on tractors, farmers leaned on fence posts. Even a couple of teenagers on dirt bikes rolled up, helmets crooked on their heads, grinning like it was the best Friday night show they'd ever seen. Out here, entertainment isn't delivered by Netflix. It's served raw, live, and free. And this was better than any county fair. Karen, meanwhile, was unraveling. She paced along the bank in her sun hat, shrieking into her phone. Yes, emergency, my car is sinking into a swamp. No, I'm not exaggerating, it's a swamp. Get a tow truck, get the fire department, get the National Guard if you have to. I almost felt sorry for the dispatcher on the other end, almost, because when Karen slammed her phone shut and spun around, she wasn't done. She stormed up toward me, mud splattering her designer shoes. "This is your fault," she screamed, face red, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You sabotaged the ground, you're going to jail for this." I leaned out of the excavator cab, calm as a man watching clouds drift. Jail? For what? Gravity? I let that hang in the air. Pretty sure mud isn't a felony. The crowd chuckled. Even the stoic old farmers, the ones who normally kept their poker faces, broke into wide grins. A rooster from my coop crowed right then, strutting proudly behind Karen like it was mocking every word she said. The teenagers on their dirt bikes howled with laughter. And then the SUV groaned again. The ground shifted beneath it, the back wheels spinning helplessly, mud spraying onto a couple of unfortunate clipboard warriors. They squealed, stumbling back as the nose dipped lower. Headlights reflected off the murky water like drowning eyes. Karen lunged forward, grabbing the door handle. "Hold on, baby, Mommy's here," she wailed, tugging at it like sheer desperation could pull 5,000 pounds of German engineering out of the bog. The crowd was eating it up. One farmer leaned toward me, whispering, "She's putting on a better show than the rodeo." "Rodeo's cheaper, too," I whispered back. The HOA entourage, though, was crumbling. Half of them were frantically on their phones, desperate for reinforcements. The other half were backing away, muttering about insurance and liability. I heard one woman in yoga pants say, "Our policy won't cover this." Another man whispered, "She said it was fine to park there. Do you think we can blame her?" It was like watching rats abandon a sinking ship, except the ship was a luxury SUV with leather seats. Karen noticed the hesitation. She spun on them, wild-eyed, shrieking, "Don't you dare leave me. This is our fight. This is about property rights, community pride." She raised her megaphone to rally them. And that's when the hood of her SUV lurched beneath her. The ground gave way with a slurp, and she toppled sideways straight into the mud. The roar of laughter that followed could have been heard 3 towns over. Even I couldn't help it. My grin hurt my cheeks. Karen emerged seconds later, head to toe in muck, sun hat gone, sunglasses dangling from one ear. She looked less like an HOA queen and more like a swamp creature dragged out of the bayou. "You'll pay for this," she sputtered, spitting mud. I tapped the excavator's controls, lowering the bucket slowly until it hovered above her SUV like the sword of Damocles. The crowd hushed, holding their breath. Then, with one final push, I nudged the back of the car. The earth collapsed. The SUV slid gracefully forward, nose diving into the pond until only the rear bumper and one taillight stuck out of the water. Silence, then cheers, loud, raucous, jubilant cheers. Farmers clapped each other on the back. The dirt bikers revved their engines in celebration. Even the cows let out a few approving moos like nature itself had joined the applause. Karen froze, dripping in mud, staring at the water where her SUV had disappeared. For once, she was speechless. I leaned out of the cab, voice calm as ever. "Parking's free," I said, "but retrieval, that'll cost you." The place erupted again, laughter echoing across the fields. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a petty feud anymore. This was legend in the making. Folks would be talking about it at diners, feed stores, and county fairs for years. Of course, Karen wasn't done. Entitlement doesn't drown easy. Within 15 minutes, she was back to barking orders, voice hoarse but still sharp. "Call the police. This is a crime. This is warfare against the HOA. One clipboard soldier dutifully dialed, while another snapped more photos like he was auditioning for CSI, Suburbia. I sat back down on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee, utterly calm. I knew how this would play out. This wasn't my first run-in with law enforcement, though usually it involved escaped cattle, not sinking SUVs. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. The crowd parted like Moses at the Red Sea. Karen, still dripping with muck, ran toward them like salvation itself. "Officers, arrest him. He destroyed my car. He endangered my life." The deputy held up a hand. "Ma'am, slow down. Whose property is this?" Karen blinked. "What? Well, technically his, but it's part of our community atmosphere." "So, ma'am," the deputy repeated, "is this your land?" Karen stammered, "No, but—" The deputy turned to me. "Sir, your farm." "Yes, sir," I said, handing him a laminated copy of my deed. "Been in my family 3 generations. Always keep a copy in my truck, just in case." The deputy glanced at it, nodded, and handed it back. Then he looked at Karen. "Ma'am, you parked your vehicle on his land without permission." She sputtered, "It's not trespassing. It's rural access." The second deputy snorted, "That's not a thing." Karen's jaw dropped. But he dug up the ground. He made it unsafe." I leaned forward, voice steady. "Sheriff, I warned her 3 times not to park there. She refused. Nature did the rest." The deputy scratched his chin, hiding a smirk. "Well, ma'am, I don't see a crime here. What I do see is trespassing, and if the landowner wants to press charges, he can." The crowd exploded with laughter again. Karen's face turned crimson. She shrieked, "You don't understand. He humiliated me. He ruined Meadowbrook's image." The deputy shrugged. "Ma'am, Meadowbrook's image ain't my problem, but your insurance company might want to hear about this." And just like that, the fight shifted. You ever see someone throw every weapon they've got, only to realize the ammo's all blanks? That was Karen, standing there in dripping mud, her SUV sinking like a tombstone in the pond, deputies smirking, neighbors laughing. But she wasn't ready to give up. No, entitlement doesn't know when to quit. She pivoted fast. If the cops weren't going to handcuff me, maybe the insurance company would swoop in and save her. Right there on the bank, covered in muck, she dialed her insurance hotline, speakerphone on full blast so everyone could hear. "This is sabotage," she barked. "He dug up the ground. He lured my SUV into a swamp like some kind of hillbilly supervillain." The crowd chuckled. Even the deputy bit his lip to hide a grin. The agent on the other end stayed calm. "Mrs. Thompson, was the vehicle parked legally on authorized property?" Karen froze, her eyes darted around, searching for a loophole. "Well, technically no, but it was adjacent." "I'm sorry," the agent interrupted, firm now. "This claim is denied. Parking on private farmland without permission is not covered under your policy." The look on Karen's face, priceless. Like someone had told her Starbucks was discontinuing pumpkin spice lattes forever. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Around her, the HOA cronies shifted uncomfortably. One muttered, "She said it was fine to park there." Another whispered, "You think our dues are going up because of this?" I nearly spit my coffee. But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. She raised her chin, mud dripping from her hair, and declared, "We'll sue. We'll drag you through court until you beg for mercy." I didn't flinch. Instead, I walked calmly into the house and came back with a thick folder. My father's old papers, updated with my own. I spread them out on the hood of the deputy's cruiser. The official land survey, the conservation easement papers, the notarized boundary statement. "See this?" I said, tapping the survey. "My land, see this stamp? Agricultural preserve, and this clause, any unauthorized development, interference, or use of this land without consent can trigger fines up to $50,000 per violation, payable by the encroaching party." The deputies whistled under their breath. The HOA folks paled. Karen's eyes widened. "You mean if we tried to rezone?" "You'd bankrupt your HOA before you even got started," I finished. Silence, sweet, heavy silence. One clipboard warrior actually stepped back like the papers were radioactive. Another rubbed his temples, whispering, "She told us it was county land." Karen tried one last gasp of control. "You can't humiliate me like this. I'll report you to the city council." The deputy chuckled. "Ma'am, the city council ain't gonna save you from sinking your own car." That's when the fight drained out of her. Shoulders slumped, eyes wild, voice cracking. She looked smaller, like the mud wasn't just on her clothes, it had seeped into her pride. The HOA crew scattered quietly. Clipboards tucked under arms, they slipped back to their SUVs without meeting my eye. Some mumbled apologies, others just shook their heads. By sundown, it was only me, the pond, and that half-submerged SUV taillight glinting like a defeated soldier's helmet. I raised my coffee mug in a quiet toast to the setting sun. "To boundaries," I muttered. "May they always hold." But the story didn't end there. Oh no, not yet. The next morning, the farm felt strangely quiet. No HOA caravans, no megaphone booming, "Attention, farmer." Just the gentle rhythm of normal life, cows chewing cud, ducks splashing, the rusty gate creaking in the breeze. And of course, the faint outline of a luxury SUV sticking out of the pond like a modern art exhibit. I couldn't resist. I brewed a pot of coffee, dragged a lawn chair down by the water, and sat like a man admiring his new fountain. Neighbors wandered by, snapping photos, chuckling. "That's going viral," one said. Another grinned. "Gotta admit, it really ties the landscape together." By noon, they were right. The video was already online. One of the teenagers on a dirt bike had filmed the whole thing, Karen screaming, the excavator nudging, the SUV sliding nose first into its watery grave. The title, HOA Karen Gets Sunk, literally. Within hours, tens of thousands of views. By evening, memes were everywhere. Karen's face photoshopped onto the Titanic. Captions like "Community standards meet farm standards." Meanwhile, Meadowbrook Estates was in chaos. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves, issuing a stiff little statement about unfortunate misunderstandings and isolated incidents. But the damage was done. The town laughed. The county laughed. Even the sheriff's department couldn't stop chuckling about it. Karen, though, she wasn't laughing. She vanished from public view, holed up in her house. Rumor had it she was trying to negotiate with her insurance company, demanding they reconsider. Others said she was threatening to sue the HOA itself, blaming them for her unjust humiliation. But whispers floated back quick: fines for trespassing, thousands of dollars in personal liability, cleanup costs. And the kicker: the towing company quoted her a bill so outrageous it nearly matched the value of the car. Apparently, they charge extra when the vehicle is 3 feet underwater. For once, Karen wasn't strutting through town. For once, she wasn't barking orders or waving glossy flyers. She was quiet, and in Meadowbrook, quiet meant defeated. That night, I sat on the porch, fireflies flickering in the fields, and thought about it all. The fight, the laughter, the spectacle. And I realized something important. This wasn't just about one woman or one SUV. It was about arrogance meeting consequences, about lines drawn in the dirt that weren't just property lines, they were respect lines. And when someone ignores them long enough, eventually the land itself pushes back. Because here's the truth: you can sink a car. You can drown entitlement. But the real lesson, the real victory, is showing everyone watching that boundaries still matter. You ever notice how sometimes the real punishment doesn't come from the fight itself, but from the echoes afterward? That's what happened here. Because sinking an SUV in my pond wasn't the end. No, that was just the spark. The fire that came after, Karen never saw it coming. The video spread like wildfire. By the time I finished morning chores the next day, my phone was blowing up with messages. Old high school buddies, cousins 2 states over, even my pastor, all forwarding me the same clip. Me and my excavator, Karen screaming. The SUV sliding nose first into the pond like a ship going down. The title alone had people howling. HOA Karen learns farmers don't play. By lunch, it had millions of views. By dinner, it was on national news. They even ran slow-motion replays, pausing on Karen's face mid-scream. Memes flooded the internet. Her SUV photoshopped as the Titanic, captions like "Community standards meet gravity." At first, I chuckled. A little vindication never hurt. But then the calls started coming in not just from friends, but from reporters. News vans rolled into the county. Drones buzzed overhead, filming the half-submerged SUV like it was a tourist attraction. Strangers pulled over on the road, snapping selfies with the pond in the background. My farm had gone from quiet to famous overnight. Karen, she couldn't hide. She tried, of course, closed her blinds, parked her husband's truck behind the house, but her name was plastered everywhere. Talk radio tore her apart. Late-night hosts joked about the HOA that drowned itself. Even the sheriff's office posted a sly tweet. Reminder, trespassing is not only illegal, it's hazardous to your vehicle's health. Meadowbrook Estates was in full meltdown. Emergency board meetings, whispered arguments in driveways, desperate emails about damage control. Some members started resigning quietly. Others tried to point fingers at Karen, calling her a rogue actor. But the internet didn't care. In the court of public opinion, the whole HOA was guilty. Then came the hammer. See, my land isn't just mine. Years ago, my father signed a conservation easement with the county and the state trust. It protected the soil, the pond, the pasture. No development, no encroachment, no funny business, and any violation of that easement, serious fines. The trust caught wind of the video. Within days, they sent officials out, clipboards, boots, county trucks parked at the gate. Not HOA clipboards, real ones. They took photos, measured tire ruts, collected mud samples from where the SUV had sunk. One of them even asked, "Do you want to press charges for environmental violation?" I raised an eyebrow. Against Karen. He nodded. Against anyone who authorized unauthorized use. Fines can reach $50,000 per incident. I didn't even have to answer. The trust already knew. They'd seen the video. They'd seen Karen waving her megaphone, declaring community authority. When that letter hit her mailbox, I heard the scream from across the fields. $50,000, personal liability. HOA couldn't cover it, it wasn't in their bylaws, which meant it landed squarely on her. She tried to fight, of course, called lawyers, claimed she was invited onto my land, claimed she was improving the community. The trust lawyers shredded every argument. By the time they were done, she wasn't just facing fines, she was facing the possibility of liens. Word spread fast. Homeowners started panicking. Dues went up. People who'd joined Meadowbrook thinking they were buying into luxury living suddenly realized they were funding one woman's crusade. Resentment bubbled over. Meetings turned ugly. Some folks even showed up on my porch, hats in hand, apologizing for her behavior. "She told us it was county land," one man admitted. "She said you were a squatter," another whispered. I just nodded. Now you know the truth. And truth has a way of sticking. Karen's empire cracked. First the board turned against her. Then her own neighbors stopped inviting her to wine nights. She used to strut through Meadowbrook with her nose high, clipboard in hand. Now she slunk to her mailbox like a ghost, head down, mud-stained shoes a reminder of the day her SUV drowned. The internet wasn't kind either. Strangers dug through public records, found every frivolous complaint she'd ever filed against neighbors. Stories poured out, her fining a man for having a red door, ticketing kids for chalk drawings, demanding one family take down their Christmas lights because they weren't tasteful. She became a symbol, not of community, but of control gone wrong. And me, I didn't even have to lift a finger anymore. The land, the law, the internet, they were doing all the work. I just kept farming, fixed fences, fed cattle, waved at the folks who slowed down to snap photos. But every night I sat on that porch staring at the pond, at the faint glint of taillight still poking out above the waterline, and I thought about how fast pride sinks, how heavy arrogance really is. Because here's the truth, the SUV wasn't just Karen's car. It was her throne, her symbol of power. And now it was buried in mud, mocked by strangers, abandoned by her own people. I didn't push her there, I just loosened the soil, she did the rest. And watching her world collapse piece by piece, I realized something. Sometimes the land itself has a way of giving justice. All you have to do is stand firm and let time do the sinking. You ever notice how storms don't always end with thunder? Sometimes they end with silence. Heavy, empty silence. That's what Meadowbrook felt like after it all unraveled. The HOA that once marched with clipboards and megaphones now barely whispered behind closed doors. The once proud board meetings, filled with Karen's booming voice and smug grins, had dwindled to a handful of exhausted homeowners bickering about bills. Karen was nowhere to be seen. The woman who used to strut down the street with her chin high now scurried to her mailbox, sunglasses on, head down, praying nobody would notice. But everyone noticed. Neighbors whispered as she passed. Cars slowed to point at her yard. Even kids laughed, calling her the lady who sank her car. Her SUV still sat in the pond. By now, most of it was underwater, only the faint edge of the roof and a single taillight still visible. The county told her she had to remove it. The towing company quoted her a price so high it nearly matched the SUV's value. She stalled, claimed she was waiting on insurance. But the truth? Insurance wasn't coming. Fines were stacking up. And the longer she waited, the worse it looked. The SUV became a landmark. People gave directions by it. Turn left at the sunken car, they'd say. Hunters used it as a meeting point. Tourists pulled over just to take photos. Karen couldn't escape it. It was her monument, her legacy. And then came the final blow. The county trust filed its report. Trespassing, environmental violation, liability for fines, $50,000, maybe more. They gave her 30 days to pay or face legal action. Meadowbrook Estates scrambled, but the board refused to cover her. They were already drowning in bad publicity, homeowners threatening lawsuits of their own. Karen begged, pleaded, tried to rally support. But the same people she'd fined for flowers, holiday lights, kids, toys left on lawns, they turned their backs. Her empire wasn't just cracked, it was gone. I heard through the grapevine that she tried selling her house. Trouble was, who wanted to buy in a neighborhood infamous for viral humiliation? Every listing online came with 1,000 comments. Is this the HOA where the lady sank her car? Realtors laughed. Prospective buyers vanished. Meadowbrook became a punchline. Property values dipped, families started moving out. One by one, the proud white fences and manicured lawns fell into disrepair. And all of it traced back to one woman's arrogance, one SUV, one pond. And me, life went back to normal. The cows didn't care about HOA politics. The chickens still clucked at sunrise. The soil still needed tending. The pond, though every time I walked past it, I couldn't help but pause. The water was calm again, reflecting clouds and trees, peaceful. But beneath that calm lay the rusting bones of Karen's pride, a reminder. Sometimes at night, sitting on my porch with a beer, I'd hear the wind creak the gate, smell the earth after rain, and think about it all. About how close they came to swallowing my land whole. About how Karen thought she could bend the world to her will. About how fast it all sank. And the lesson was clear. You can fight storms, you can fight drought, you can fight coyotes and disease, but the hardest fight, the one against arrogance wrapped in rules, paperwork, and fake authority, that's the one that wears you down slow. But here's the thing, you don't have to scream, you don't have to beg, you don't even have to fight on their terms. Sometimes all you need to do is stand firm, hold your ground, and let time and truth do the work. Because pride is heavy, entitlement is heavier, and when it pushes too far onto land it doesn't own, eventually it sinks. Karen learned that the hard way, the whole county learned it watching her, and I just kept farming. The soil remembers who belongs to it, and it never forgets who tried to steal it. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.